Yo guys, what is up? Max here on a Diablo 4 video, and today we're doing a rapid fire recap of the Campfire chat. The Campfire chat was an hour and 50 minutes long. If you want to go watch the whole thing, I'll have a link in the description, but I kind of want to cover all of the things that they talked about as efficiently and quickly as I can. Hope you enjoy the video. Let's get right into it. So the very first thing that we need to talk about is itemization. They are reducing the number of affixes that roll on gear. So if you find a legendary item, it's only going to have 3 affixes as opposed to 4, and rares will only have 2. In addition to that, they're removing a lot of the super conditional damage affixes and conditional affixes in general. So like shadow damage to damage over time affected enemies is just going to be increased damage. Damage reduction from close or damage reduction while fortified is just going to be damage reduction. Everything is going to be much more simplified. Rolls will be higher on gear, and they're also significantly lowering the gear drop rates. So they don't want you going through a dungeon and filling up your entire inventory with gear. Gear drops are going to be much more rare, but it's going to be a lot easier to find items that are genuinely useful for your build because there's a whole lot of less variance between different stats, and you're going to be getting items that are more generally useful. For example, if you're playing a barbarian, you're not going to have an item that drops with increased intelligence drop for you. You'll only have items that have strength on it drop, so that you're getting items that are going to be improving your build. In addition to that, only ancestral items will drop in World Tier 4, and only sacred items will drop in World Tier 3, and they're making uniques be able to drop. Any unique can drop in World Tier 3, so you're not going to have uniques that are locked into World Tier 4. You can get a Tempest Roar while you're in World Tier 3, and you have a chance of getting Uber uniques from enemies that are level 55. Doesn't mean you're going to be getting Uber uniques, but you're going to be finding uniques easier and more often, finding them that are going to be able to allow you to put your build together sooner rather than later. In addition to that, any monster that's level 95 plus is going to guarantee drop 925 item power items, meaning that you're going to be getting, as soon as you're basically realistically doing World Tier 4 Nightmare Dungeons, you're going to be finding 925 items from everything. This means that you no longer need to farm only Duriel for the best items. Getting the highest tier items is going to be really common and really often, meaning that everything that drops on the ground for you, for the most part, is going to be possibly helpful for your build. They're also reducing a lot of the materials. So for example, there was a lot of different materials from the different areas where you'd have like berries from one area to make an elixir, or apples from another area, just like bite berry, all these different materials. It's just going to be one herb. It's just one herb. You get it, and then you can craft your potions, craft your elixirs. They're consolidating a lot of the random material mess that was in the game. The next big change, and this is my favorite of all of them, is they're redoing how the Codex of Power works. Before, the Codex of Power would only work for some aspects, and it would only store minimum rolls. If you've ever played the Division 2, they're basically adding the Division 2's library system to Diablo 4. So what this means is if you find a aspect where your Pulverize sends out an aftershock, and you find it as a max roll, you can now save that by just salvaging the item. You just salvage the item, it'll automatically save into your codex, and now you can use that for infinite uses on any of your pieces of gear. So if you find an Edge Masters with a max roll on it, you can use it for all of your alternative characters, and you can use it as many times as you want. Now, this is going to mean that finding max roll affixes are going to be a little bit more difficult, but you're going to constantly be upgrading your Codex of Power with affixes for your build by finding them and breaking them down. And this means that just one, it's going to free up a ton of space in your storage, so you're no longer going to have to store aspects. There's no tab for storing aspects at all anymore. It's just all sorted and neatly done in your Codex of Power for you. This will free up stash tab space. It'll make putting builds together way easier because you're not going to have to be hoarding on those affixes, and you're not going to have to save pieces of gear. My biggest complaint with Diablo 4 is a lot of times you'd have a really good piece of gear, but you didn't want to put your perfect aspect on that piece of gear until you got an even better piece of gear type deal. So now you can have full build freedom and not have to worry about putting those aspects on your gear and possibly breaking your build or breaking yourself, so that you have to wait another 10-20 hours to find another good aspect. The next system they're adding is tempering. If you're any bit familiar with Last Epoch's legendary potential, this is basically that. So you're going to find these manuals, which will roll with affixes that are focused on certain things. So you can get a temper manual for marksman stuff, and it'll have all marksman skills or marksman damage. You can, as you see on the right, you can find a weapon one, so it'll only roll like damage aspects. And then this one is specific for bone builds or bone necromancer. And what you can do with these is when you find a legendary item, or when you make a legendary item, you can then temper it to grab random affixes from these manuals. So if you find a piece of gear that has 2 tempered affixes available, which will, all of your ancestrals will have 2 tempered affixes, you can add 2 random tempered affixes onto your pieces of gear. And if you don't like what you get, you've got tempering durability, which allows you to re-roll those affixes. So basically, you've got 5 tries on this on landing 2 affixes that you're looking for. Here, we've got charge, cooldown reduction, and damage while berserking that was added onto this amulet. But as you saw in that previous slide, there's going to be a lot of things for tempering that we've never seen before. Aspects that like will, or affixes that will like increase your area of certain skills, like bones, bone spirit explosion radius, or affixes that will allow you to fire extra projectiles from your like bone spears. So there's going to be brand new affixes that you can add, and obviously you could probably stack a bunch of these affixes on different things. So now all of a sudden on your bone spear build, you're going to be constantly sending out more bone spears, or those splinters are going to be splintering even more. It should allow for even more build diversity, and also making items that are more unique to you, because, you know, when you're tempering these things, you can really custom make and tailor make some of these builds. The next system they're adding is greater affixes. So anytime an item drops for you, it has a chance to be rolled as a greater affix. A greater affix will have a 1.5x multiplier to it. If you're familiar with Last Epoch's exalted systems, this is basically like an exalted piece of gear. So as you can see, this normal dagger could roll with this dexterity being a greater affix roll. So it's going to be up to 126. And this crit damage that rolled up to 50% could roll up to like a 75% crit damage increase. So not only are you going to be trying to hunt down these best pieces of gear at endgame, but you're also going to be hunting for pieces of gear that roll with greater affixes, which is just going to make them even stronger. In addition to this, uniques can drop with greater affixes, which is kind of insane because uniques have some really, really powerful aspects rolls. Like, for example, on the like lightning storm gloves, the aesthetic wraps, you could, for example, roll a greater affix in your lucky hit chance, or your Ranks of Defiance passive, which would give you even more craziness to your uniques, and it's going to give us incentive to get the same unique over and over again, rather than just kind of getting one and done. Unique and unique power could vary quite a bit. And this leads us into our next system. And that system is Masterworking. Now, this is replacing gear upgrades. So, you know, when you'd go to the blacksmith and you'd upgrade your gear and its affixes would increase slightly, and maybe the armor would increase on an armor piece. This is Masterworking. Any item can get Masterworked up to 12 times. There's a new endgame activity called the Pit that you're going to farm for Masterworking materials. And every 4 ranks of Masterworking, you're going to randomly upgrade 1 affix on your piece of gear massively. So as you can see, here on rank 2, we had 880 max life. We ranked it up to rank 3. We had 920. And then on rank 4, we luckily hit the max life. So we got 1,120 max life. This is a ton of max life on a rank 4 ring. And at the rank 8 and the rank 12, you can hit another thing again, and you can hit the same one again. So you could potentially Masterwork hit max life 3 times in a row and get a ring with a ridiculous amount of max life. Or you could hit like a golem active cooldown reduction, or max out your crit chance. And if you don't hit what you want on your Masterworking, you can actually redo it. It'll still consume, you won't get your materials refunded, but you could keep Masterworking the same perfect piece of gear until you hit like crit chance 3 times, for example, if you're like really trying to min-max. So that is going to be insane. And once again, you can Masterwork uniques. So this is an example of a wand that's been Masterworked. As you can see, the intelligence is way higher, because it hit once on Masterworking, and this percent damage roll is way higher. It's like basically double because it got Masterwork hit twice. And so this is a Masterworked weapon, and they're improving the journey that you're going to be taking with your pieces of gear. No longer when you get a piece of gear and you upgrade it a few times and put an aspect on it, is it done. There's so much more and so much more grind that you can do for your different weapons and pieces of gear to really min-max your build. Next up, they're adding a new endgame system, which is basically bar for bar greater rifts from Diablo 3. Once you get to Nightmare Dungeons level, I think it was 45, you unlock the Pit, and the Pit is basically going to be your greater rift system. It has no Nightmare Dungeon affixes at all, meaning you're not going to get like a lightning storm chasing you around, or enemies causing death explosions, or reducing your damage and armor and resistances. There are no Nightmare Dungeon affixes, thank God. And the Pit is going to be a timed experience. If you die, you're trying to beat it in a certain amount of time, and if you die, you like get time added to it, so it's going to make it harder to complete. And even if you don't complete it in time, you can still get rewards. You're just not going to get the Masterwork rewards. And what you're doing in the Pit is you're trying to climb as high as you possibly can, but you're also going to be earning higher tiers of Masterwork stuff. So from like Masterworking a piece of gear from Masterwork 8 to 12, you're going to need to do a much higher tier of the Pit to earn the material to do that, rather than Masterworking from like 1 to 4. And so the Pit is going to be a new endgame push. It's going up a ridiculous amount of levels. They said level 250 enemies in the Pit at max level, I believe, which is insane because the Abattoir of Zir, for example, only went up to like level 160 something. So these are going to be 250 enemies. And then in the Pit, you're going to be able to unlock the ability to also fight level 200 tempered uber bosses. And so they're adding variants of the current endgame bosses, like tempered uber duriel. And if you kill tempered uber duriel, you're going to get a guaranteed one mat of crafting an uber unique. There's going to be 5 of these bosses, so you're going to be able, if you kill all of the tempered uber bosses, you're going to be able to craft yourself a uber unique on any class. So every class is basically guaranteed, if you can do this, or every character is guaranteed one uber unique, which is fantastic. And these uber bosses are going to have higher base chance of giving you more Ubers, I believe they said. And so that is going to be very cool. And they're also adding a new Uber boss, which is Andariel. Andariel is going to have the same drop table as Duriel, so it's not like it's going to be a whole bunch of new items to get from it. But if you don't want to do Duriel, if you don't want to do the same like Varshan kind of loop and doing Helltides, you can do Beast and Ice and Lord Zur from like Nightmare Dungeons and World Activities, and then go fight a new boss that has the same drops as Duriel, so you're not missing out on anything. So that's pretty cool there. Next up, they're buffing Helltides. Helltides are going to be available to you at World Tier 1 and 2, so you can just go and do them. And when you're killing enemies in Helltides, you're going to build up basically like a wanted meter, where eventually when you build up that wanted meter enough, it's just going to be alerting the army of hell, and all of a sudden tons of enemies are going to be constantly spawning on you. So the density should feel better in Helltides. You're going to be getting more materials from Helltides, and you don't have to run around searching for enemies, because enemies will constantly be spawning on you. As you can see in the clip that's playing right now, enemies are just going to be constantly spawning on this character. So Helltides should be a lot better, and also Helltides are basically always active now. So you could use Helltides to level up. You're going to get more materials, and it should be a more rewarding experience. Lastly, they buffed the amount of experience that you're getting. So in World Tier 2, you used to get 20% increased experience from World Tier 1. Now it's going to be 50%. World Tier 3 is going up from 100 to like 150. And World Tier 4 is going up from 200 experience to 250. So across the board, you should be leveling up faster, hitting endgame faster, and being able to experience the endgame content faster. I believe the like world record for leveling last season, or season 3, was like 14 to 16 hours. So I expect people to be hitting level 100 in like 10 hours with these new changes, which would be absolutely insane. And so you're going to be able to experience this endgame a lot faster and easier. If these changes sound good to you, or if they don't sound good, you can check them out and try them for yourself from April 2nd to April 9th. There's going to be a public test realm. They're doing a PTR. It's going to be on PC Battle.net only. So if you're on console, you can't try this out. And if you're on Steam, you can't try this out. But PC Battle.net, you will be able to try out all of these changes. You're going to be able to start at level 100 with like 10 million gold, all the resources, all your stuff's done. You're going to have a mount, campaign completion, all your skill points. You basically dive in on a max level character, and you'll be able to try out the new endgame, try out the itemization. I think it should be really cool, and we'll get an idea of how Diablo 4 is going to feel. And they're also delaying the start of season 4 so that they can take in all the feedback from the PTR. So the new season doesn't start until May 14th, which is quite a while to wait, I'm going to be honest, but hopefully all these changes are good. Overall, I think they did a really good job in improving the game in a lot of the aspects that we're hoping for. The itemization sounds way more interesting. Hopefully it adds for more build diversity. There's a lot of things that I didn't mention in this video in the interest of time. So once again, you can check out the whole video, and they'll also be releasing patch notes soon. But I think they're doing a pretty good job of responding to our feedback, and hopefully season 4 is fantastic. It's sounding really cool, and I will absolutely be diving back in. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll catch you on the next one. Take care. Peace.